Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. The Magical Learning Podcast is a podcast where we look at important topics in business and life, breaking down in a fun way so it's enjoyable and a great way to learn. Magical Learning has been running as a training and facilitation company for over 25 years and has partnered with global thought leaders like Robin Sharma and John Mattone. So if you want to have a little bit of fun while you learn, this is the podcast to do it. And today you will have seen probably, if you're on the YouTube, a thumbnail with some bizarre image, I'm sure, and title, because it is going to be one of our concept Sandbox episodes that does give us some pretty weird outcomes sometimes. But before we get into anything today, we've got to check in on the team and see how they're doing. So let's start with John. You haven't been on in a while and you've got a new background today. So tell us a little bit about where's the new location, and is there any unusual or interesting objects in the same room as you, and how are you?
Very good, thank you all. Very loaded question. Yes, there is a pool table. There's a sofa bed and a pool table. Just in another part of the room of the house, the wife decided that I needed to move from where I was because when she's at home, I'm sort of central in the kitchen area. So yes, I needed to be put further away.
Well, look, I mean, it's a great new studio. We're going to call it the studio now, John. I think that's the best way to call it. And it's good that we here at Magical Learning are so advanced. We put pool tables in our recording studios. No
Absolutely.
other podcast place is doing that. That's what I'll say. Well,
Yes.
great to have you on, John. And
Thank you.
yeah, we're excited to get into the conversation with you today. Let's go to Graham. Graham, our CEO. How's things going?
Hey, Jess, I'm well. Good to see everybody. The idea of being put further away certainly resonates with me. I am actually in a hut on Mawson Sound in the Antarctic. Is that in the Antarctic? I think it might be. I also might not be, but I don't have a pool table in my background, sadly. But happy to be here, Jess.
Well, excited to have you, and our first podcast to be recording from Pool's Table Studio and the Antarctic simultaneously, so very exciting there. Danette, you've also got a new background like John. Where are you recording out of today, and how are you going?
I'm good, Jez. I'm at mum and dad's, so I have a bed behind me because this is the spare bedroom that I'm working out of while I'm down here. So all good, and it finally is starting to feel like spring.
And the good thing about actually a mattress behind you is that it absorbs sound. So it's you've actually kind of built an accidental sound studio right there. So that's pretty helpful.
That's awesome, right?
Well,
Sorry, Jess, could that also be absorbing the sound of when the podcast becomes so dreary that Danette actually passes out from boredom and falls backwards onto the bed? So, it's strategically positioned.
Well, there is, I mean, that does bring up the idea that there could be a stunt aspect to the Magical Learning Podcast that we haven't fully tapped into yet. So we'll keep that in the brains ticking over for future episodes, how we can incorporate more stunts onto the podcast. But today we're going to be doing, as I mentioned before, a concept sandbox. So this is one of these podcasts where we're basically going to be looking at a regular kind of business problem. But instead of setting it in the real world, we have a bit of fun and give it a fantastical setting because, a business problem in one setting is still a business problem in another setting. We've set these with Peter Pan, Lord of the Rings, Star Trek. So we've had a bunch of different settings before. They're always a bit of fun. On top of that, though, we're going to be looking at an interesting topic. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about quotes. And we're going to be incorporating both of these together to build our concept sandcastle. TM. Let's get that trademarked. Me in the future editing this podcast. So, without further ado, you know what, John? It's been a while since you've been on the podcast, so you can pick our fantastical setting. So, I want you to think of any maybe franchise, any sort of surreal setting. That's all you've got to give me, and then I'll give us the business problem.
Or family.
The royal family. Okay, fascinating. Okay, well, that's all right. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do the royal family. And the problem is that there's two people no longer want to work together in a 15-person team. So I don't know if that rings true. That was pre-decided before we selected the topic, but that's something that they need to think about. So two people don't want to work together in the team anymore, and it's a 15-person team. So we're going to be thinking about that broadly for the royal family while we tackle the topic of quotes. So we've got our setting, we've got our problem. Let's start with our topic. So, Danette, let's talk about quotes. I know you love quotes, so let's jump into what this topic brings up for you.
So I do love quotes, love a good quote everywhere. So for me, one of the things when I was thinking about this topic is that I often use quotes as either affirmations or motivators. So two that I brought to today, one's a Robin Sharma one, no surprise there, which is with better awareness comes better choices, and with better choices comes better results. And I like that one because in order to change, we first have to be aware. Once we're aware, then we can make different choices, which gives us different results. The second one that I really love, and this is one when I'm sort of just need a little bit of a motivator for myself, is one by Marianne Williamson. It's a poem. Nelson Mandela used it on his inauguration as president in South Africa. And apologies, I've got a bit of a cold, so I'm a little bit snuffled up. But that one was our deepest fear. And I'll just read the first little bit, which is our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? And it goes on to basically talk about when we shine, we give others permission to shine as well. So I like that as a reminder that when we bring our best self to the world, we also encourage others to bring their best selves to the world. So they were my two, and I love it because it helps, point people in the right direction or the positive direction.
Well, I think just sort of jumping off that, I think we can start with the Robin Sharma one there. Is better decisions essentially equals better results, right?
Yes.
And better decision making. So maybe we have to learn a little bit more about what's happening between these two people. That might help us make better decisions.
Yes. Yeah. And help them maybe make better choices too. Okay. So how do we learn more about them, Jez?
Well, we're going to have to do some investigating, I suppose. Let's just say it's two of the royal guards don't want to work together anymore. Okay, two of the people that wear the big hats. They're not interested in doing shifts where they stand silently next to each other anymore. They're not enjoying each other's company. So let's just say it's two of those people. I guess we're gonna have to start saying what the problems are and can they be addressed.
Yep.
What do you think, John or Graham?
But I guess part of it is that you're not going to like everyone in the workplace, irrespective. Like we don't live in Disneyland, where everyone gets on happily. There's always going to be a conflict. There's always going to be someone who grates against you, blah, blah, blah. And one of the quotes that I've always liked is, you don't have to like each other, but you do have to respect each other. So irrespective of what your personal feelings are towards someone else, when you go to work to do a job. So you need to respect the fact that other people are there to do that same job. And you don't have to like them. You don't have to have Christmas together or share birthdays or anything like that. But yeah, in the workplace, you respect that everyone is there to do their job. And everyone, look, I don't know too many people that have ever gone to work to do a bad job. Everyone's there trying to do something right. So respect the fact that that's what they're there for.
I love that, John, because one of the bits from my quote is the better awareness. And everyone's different. And so you're a bit about that respect. So you don't have to like someone because they might be very different in how they approach work. Doesn't make them wrong just because they're different. No. And we often
different is just different.
Yeah. We often talk in workshops about the Neuro Leadership Institute SCARF model, which says that, some people like status, some people are high in certainty, some people are high in autonomy in their preferences, some are high in relatedness, and some are high in fairness. So I wonder whether part of this challenge between the Royal Guards is that they just potentially have different preferences, and because they aren't curious, they're not respecting each other, and the differences that actually combined could make what they both do better.
Well, that then goes to the Ted Lasso quote when he's throwing darts. Be curious. The Walt Whitman statement. that he saw on the wall. Be curious. You know, you don't know what's going on in people's lives. All you see is that facade in front of you. And there's another quote I'll have to find, something about, you know, what you see is just a perception. It's your perception. It's not necessarily the truth. You know, what you hear doesn't mean it's the truth.
Yeah.
So, yeah, be curious.
Yeah, love that, John. Well, John, can we actually stay with you there? Did you have any other quotes that you were interested in sharing as part of this quotes sort of topic?
Look, I shot through a heap of them to you, and many hundreds and thousands of years ago, back when Graham was a little boy and dinosaurs roamed the world, there used to be a desk calendar, a paper desk calendar for every day, and on the bottom of it were quotes. And every now and again, I always had one on my desk, but I'd every now and again rip a page out, and because it meant something to me or resonated with me, and they were the quotes that I sent through. But in terms of this topic, there was also a quote by Thomas Jefferson. I believe it's given to him, and it says, "I don't like that man. I must get to know him." And it's like, yeah, you know, it's simple things like that, as I said, you don't know what's going on in people's lives. You don't know why they're behaving the way they're behaving, unless you go up and actually take that first step or make that first introduction or say hello or take that step of kindness. You know, you're not going to get to know these people, and things are going to simmer in the background. So for these two royal guards who don't want to talk to each other or don't want to work with each other, get to know each other. Spend some time with each other and put yourself out as hard as that can be.
What a perfect quote, John, for what we're talking about here. And I mean, and if they don't want to do that, we can say, do you think you're better than Thomas Jefferson? You know?
Exactly. And if they're English, they'll probably go, who was he?
Yeah, exactly.
He was one of the
you
four.
better get to know him.
Yeah, well, he was one of the ones. Did he fight against the English, or was that?
Yeah, I don't know American history enough. We're the British people in this situation.
He was one half of Jefferson Airplane.
Oh, right, that's who he was. Yeah.
The other half was actually Airplane Jelly. Did you know they were a bit of a Simon and Garfunkel type scenario? Yeah, Graham. Anyway, so I guess sort of from that and like just off of that quote, Graham, did you have any thoughts so far on the Royal Guards and quotes in general here?
Some of the quotes that sort of came to mind. The one that John shared about curiosity, I love that, and I can't remember where I read it. It's not mine, but it's a quote that I have used ad nauseum throughout the years: is "Don't get furious, get curious." And it speaks so well to tying back into the other one that John shared about you don't necessarily have to like everybody, but you should respect them. I went to the dark side because of Friday and because I can. Some of the other quotes that might be relevant in that sort of scenario, that's not a knife. This is a knife. Those of you watching or listening know I am not recommending or condoning anything along those lines. I'm just talking about quotes. But maybe you could use the knife to help spread some marmalade jelly on the toast of the other guard that you're not happy with. This too shall pass. The other one that springs to mind, and I've probably read it somewhere else, but it's one that I've used a lot recently, is your brain is not your friend sometimes. And I think just broadly speaking, we can tie that back into the whole difference thing. And Danette was talking about the scarf model and understanding that we're not all the same. We don't think the same way. We don't even look at the world in the same way. Our perception or our reality is so different from everybody else's around us. So I think that idea of recognizing sometimes that your brain will perceive other people in a particular way based on a whole bunch of stuff going on between your ears. And none of it is real except it's real in your head. That's it. And, things like unconscious bias can make it really difficult sometimes for us to get along with other people. So just being aware of that. Sometimes it's okay to hold a conscious bias. Like, I don't like that particular football team, for argument's sake. We won't talk about the team that won the AFL game last night because nobody wants to. And for the rest of the world, it doesn't matter. It's just Australia. I do like that this too shall pass. I think just being reminded that everything is temporary, except for my sense of humour, which is apparently forever terrible. But there you go. Moving on.
Yes, it is.
And discuss. Thanks, John.
Sorry, I wasn't mic'd up. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't mic'd. Mic was on shit.
Caught on a hot mic there, John.
Timing's everything. But that's exactly right. Everything will pass. And that quote Marcus Aurelius, there's a quote there that everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perception, not the truth. So, what's going on between our ears really does impact how we perceive the world. And then there's another one by Bobby Knight, who I think was a football or American gridiron player or baseball player. Your biggest opponent isn't the other guy. It's human nature.
The band Human Nature.
Yeah. And they were terrible.
My biggest enemy.
I quite like them. I
it says a lot, doesn't
it? Jump in on the back of John's, the quote that you just mentioned about your biggest opponent is not the other team or whatever. There is a similar quote saying, I can't remember where I got it from, about your greatest competition or your greatest opponent being the person you're looking at in the mirror.
Yeah.
Which I think ties quite nicely into everything else.
Well, I mean, I understand, Graham. I've got a human nature themed mirror, so you got to understand it's really a complex experience. I wanted to actually talk about that unconscious bias because I think that that's something we can actually look at in this situation here, because we can go, where is the conflict happening? Is it a conscious situation? This guy keeps stealing my lunch, or is there a deeper unconscious bias that's creating this tension? And is it one-sided as well? Is what this also makes me think. Is one person just doing something annoyingly that the other person doesn't like, that the other person is it not registering,
I was going to say, so our unconscious bias basically are our brain's shortcut to making decisions. So they're very flawed. And we've spoken on previous podcasts about whoever's the tallest person in a room, if you don't know who's in the room, you'll assume the tallest person is the leader. And so a lot of those biases, until we make them conscious, so going back to the quote by Robin Sharma, with better awareness, so better consciousness, then we can make better choices. So even just going, where's this coming from? So is this, as you said, a conscious thing, someone's stealing their lunch, their sandwiches or something? Or more likely it is an unconscious bias. So they are potentially both of them making decisions, because we know when we meet people for the first time, we judge them really quickly. And, the fastest way to hack that is to be friendly. So if you smile at another person, they're more likely to like you. But in this instance, one of them could have been having a bad day when they got introduced, and the other one was sort of frowning, and they just decided they didn't like them on the spot. And then their brain did confirmation bias, which every time they were dealing with them, it was filtering out any good information and just bringing in, they're not a nice person. So, going back to Ted Lasso's quote about being curious, super, super important, because it's quite likely if they sat with one another and were intentional, they'd find a whole stack of things that they actually have in common. And I know Graham and I have used this in workshops, and I'm pretty sure John's used it as well, as about go and meet someone in the room you don't know and find out a couple of things you've got in common. And that often breaks that unconscious bias down and creates more connection. So I wonder whether the team of 15 need a little bit of team building to actually try and find out the things they have in common rather than the stuff that's not so in common.
Going off what Danette was saying, having things in common, wasn't there? There was a thing a few years ago about everyone was 8 steps away from Kevin Bacon or something like that. Do you remember 7 steps, was it? 6?
Yeah, it was 7, yep.
Yeah, but
wasn't it? I thought it was the whole 6 degrees of separation.
But that's exactly it.
But correct, yeah.
But it was all that, like, everyone's got something in common that draws us to, now whether it's Kevin Bacon or whatever. But yeah, Danette was talking about these guys put them in a room and close the door, and let them talk to each other, and if one comes out alive, that's even better. But if they both do, that's great. And you don't take a knife to a gunfight. No, sorry, that's different one again. Yeah. But everyone has stuff in common. Like the overlap is the 6 degrees of separation. The overlap we have with other people is amazing. And, you can go to the other side of the world, doesn't matter what country you're in, and the chances of finding someone that has been to your little village or is from your country, like it's astounding how, the crossover is amazing.
And I'd just like to point out here that if Bacon would like to come and join us on this podcast, we would love to find out the 6 degrees of separation, because I reckon that'd be pretty awesome. And Kevin Bacon is a really fun guy. I love his socials.
That sounds good. Yeah, Kevin, if you're a magical learner, feel free to reach out. We'll get you on an episode, and we can maybe even do a concept sandbox Footloose themed or something. We can try and incorporate it.
So firstly, Kevin, if you're not watching or listening to this, what is wrong with you? Have some self-respect. Well, that pretty much trashed the possibility of Kevin Bacon joining the Magical Learning Podcast anytime soon. I love the, again, just going back to the whole brain science, and there's been so much focus on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and rightfully so, in recent years. It's helpful, I think, sometimes to remember that the avoidance of things like inclusivity and diversity, etc., is fundamentally biologically hardwired into our brain. Our brain evolves to notice difference. I'm not saying it's a good thing, by the way. Any sort of racism or exclusion, etc. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it is a human thing. And I think sometimes it helps to understand that. But as John pointed out, we are all at a level exactly the same. So I think to that was saying, doing an activity to find out what we have in common rather than how we differ is a really good idea.
And the other thing I wonder about is, given they're different, they're likely to have different strengths. So I wonder even if finding out and exploring what those strengths are, so that when they're standing side by side, they may actually be better with those strengths acknowledged than they currently are, where they're looking for the differences and how one of them feels better than the other one, or feels, I don't know, higher in status than the other one. So I wonder if just even in that, what have we got in common? Let's look at each other's strengths and actually see if we can utilize those across the team. And maybe they'll work out that their strengths actually help other members of the 15, and maybe they should be working, like maybe the current system is a bit broken because the same two people have to work with each other all the time. Maybe they'd get a better result if they moved people around and did different shifts so that they got to work and get to know more of the team members rather than just two of the team members, or one in this instance.
That's really good. Yeah, I love that. And one thing that I was thinking that often breaks the tension sometimes is comedy. So maybe this could be another avenue in, is a bit of comedy. So I've got some comedy quotes here that I like from some years of. So the first thing actually when I thought of this topic was the classic Groucho Marx quote, "I refuse to join any club that would have me as a member." It's always a good one to know, and I feel like that's always kind of funny. But maybe that's something that they're both feeling, is they're both feeling that maybe they don't feel like they belong. Maybe there's a sense of inadequacy, and they're trying to create a stronger sense of internal hierarchy because they feel a bit of imposter syndrome. So that could be something. Here's another one. This one's from Dimitri Martin. He says, "Saying I'm sorry is the same as saying I apologize, except at a funeral." So that's a good one. Another classic there. I don't know. Hopefully neither of them's caused some sort of incidental death in the family of the other or something like that. But that's another one. And then the final one that I had here was, I think this was by, I didn't actually get the person's name, so I have to find. Apologies. Put it in the podcast description. And this is it. At one point, I was putting 17 sugars in my tea. I know it's unbelievable, and I do wonder sometimes what my mum was thinking to allow it. The weirdest thing was that if I had 18 teaspoons, it was too sweet. So anyway, that's I don't know what that means, but these were some different quotes as well that I thought I'd share.
Well, they made me laugh, Jess, the quotes. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe they could, as part of the team building, get each other to find a quote from a comedian to bring a bit of laughter, because that puts the feel-good chemicals in and creates more connection amongst the team as well, because laughter obviously is way better than not liking each other. So maybe they start a thing that at the beginning of the shift, when they're standing beside each other, they have to each share a joke and try and stop the straight face that they're supposed to hold of the other person. I reckon that'd be a great way to start a shift.
Well, did before we, I guess we've probably grabbed some quotes from everybody here, and we've started to look at the problem. But do we have any sort of final sort of thoughts here around quotes and any sort of ideas we haven't touched on yet? So maybe I'll start with Graham. Actually, did you have any final thoughts here, Graham, or any ideas around quotes that we haven't touched on yet?
There was a couple going back to this idea of helping the feuding guards think a little differently about how they might connect. One was from Bill Nye, the scientist. I didn't Google it, but essentially it is that everybody you ever meet will know something that you don't. And I guess the other one is, and I don't really have a quote around it, but one that does or did sort of jump out at me was Mother Teresa, who was once quoted, and again I'll probably misquote it, but hopefully you get the idea. The context was talking about war and conflict and everything else, and Mother Teresa's quote was something along the lines of, everybody just swept their own front step. If they just kept their own front step clean, then the world would be a better place, etc. And part of that, I think, was that that just triggers another quote, which will be my last one, which came from Wayne Dyer, about how we spend an inordinate amount of time having opinions about everybody else. And somebody else's opinion of me is none of my business. How does that tie in with everything? I have no idea, folks. That's up to you to work out. Let us know what you come up with.
And actually, Graham, that's actually a good point. If you do have any thoughts on the topic, please feel free to leave them in the comments. You can do that on YouTube or Spotify. And if you have a setting that you'd like to see in a future Concept Sandbox, please leave that as well. We are interested. So yes, great little attention to detail there, Graham. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, I might go to Danette. Danette, did you have any final thoughts on today's conversation and quotes and the sort of how to deal with the two guards?
Yep. So I see every bit of conflict as, you can't change the other person, but you can learn about yourself and you can learn better ways of dealing with conflict. So our brain loves certainty. So Graham's quote earlier about your brain is not your friend sometimes is totally true. So our brain likes certainty. So it sees someone and it decides this is who this person is. And then going back to John's Ted Lasso classic quote about curiosity and being curious, that every time we judge someone, that actually says something about us rather than the other person. And so it's an opportunity to recognize that your brain's judging to get certainty. It's not your friend. And actually the best thing you can do is be curious. So I'd encourage both of the Royal Guards to actually go, all right, my brain's judging, so it's a little bit fearful. What is it that, I can look at in this other person and learn more about, but also what can I learn about myself so I'm a more curious person every time I show up in any situation. So that curiosity keeps people's brains open, which makes them smarter anyway. So I'd encourage both of them to get a bit curious about each other and how they can make this work better.
Well, very good. And love that. Love leaving with that be curious, that quote that gets floated around on the Magical Learning podcast. But John brought it to today's one, which is really great. Always a pleasure. And Danette, thanks so much for jumping on today. Always a pleasure. John, any final thoughts on today's conversation, quotes, and what the guards should do?
Yeah, I guess I love where Danette, like the whole conversation and where it's all gone, because ultimately you've got the power as to whether you like or don't like someone. There's a Marcus Aurelius quote that says, you have the power over your mind. So you can channel your thoughts. If you look for the worst in things, you'll find it. If you look for the best in things, you'll find that too. So what are you looking for, and what does that say about you, and what can you learn from that? Because, and there's another couple of quotes, run your own race. Who cares what others are doing? The only question to ask yourself is, am I progressing? And if you're going out of your way to bag someone else or hate someone, again, you're not progressing. And the other one, the last one I'll say is, leadership is about what you do when no one's watching. So it's what you do, what you say, how you act towards other people when no one else is around. So what are you doing? And you've got to start with you. So if you're the two guards, start looking at yourself and your own actions. And if you're the team of 15, how do you improve the team? Because, there's no I in team kind of thing, and it's only as strong as its weakest link. Keep throwing them out there, but the team has to function. So get over yourself and respect people in the workplace.
Love that, John, and great to have you on again. Very excited that you've joined us from the new recording studio. Always a pleasure. I thought I'd share my final thoughts here, which is that I did use our new high-tech whiteboard. So I was thinking, how could they have come together? And I thought, let's use one of the quotes that kind of got blown past, but I thought maybe more relevant than we thought. Perhaps they have a shared love of knives. And so maybe that's not a knife. This is a knife. I present to you this, which is a cartoon of these two sharing their love of knives. And the caption is, letting their guard down. So I don't know. This is a special for those watching at, whoops. This is for those watching on YouTube and Spotify. So that's an incentive to go over and watch the podcast as well as listen to it. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. What a pleasure and what a fun conversation. I know I've taken a lot away from it, and hopefully these two have as well. Until everybody, thank you so much for sharing as well. The podcast is now over 10,000 subscribers on YouTube and climbing. So we're very happy with that. So thank you for everybody that's been sharing and enjoying those. Please keep doing that. And as always, have a magical week.